Welcome to the Food Junkies podcast. Here, we aim to bring you the experience, strength, and hope of professionals working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. Our mission is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a recognized disorder. Here, we discuss all things recovery, exploring the many pathways people take towards abstinence in order to achieve a health-forward lifestyle. We hope to inspire you to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, and share your journey with others. And hopefully the message will spread. So today's guest is someone whose journey into nutrition didn't begin in a classroom. It began in the heart of a mother. I'm so grateful to introduce you to Natalie Peltro, a certified nutritional therapist and lifestyle medicine expert whose work is deeply rooted in lived experience, curiosity, and a fierce commitment to healing. Natalie's path began when her son was diagnosed with severe nonverbal autism. Faced with limited answers, she turned toward food, lifestyle, and the body's innate capacity to heal. What started as concern really came kind of a devotion through intentional changes. She began to see some really profound shifts in her son's healing and well-being. That experience didn't just change her family's life, it reshaped her purpose. So today, Natalie is the co-founder of Blue Life RX, where she and her team are working to transform how we approach health, moving from symptom management to true root cause healing through lifestyle medicine. She eventually transitioned to a plant-based way of eating after leading detox programs and experiencing the benefits firsthand. Now, alongside her business partner, a plant-based physician, she's helping both adults and children build sustainable, nourishing habits in ways that feel practical, empowering, and even joyful. Her work includes supporting families with picky eaters through her course, Bring the Fun Back to Mealtime, and guiding individuals through gradual, realistic detox programs that focus on adding in vibrant, nourishing foods rather than relying on restriction or overwhelm. And something that feels really meaningful to me is that Natalie lives right here in my community alongside incredible practitioners like Milan, who share this vision of transforming health through food as medicine. There's something powerful about being surrounded by people who are walking the same path, who believe that healing is possible and that it can start on our plates, in our homes, and in our daily rhythms. So, in today's conversation, Natalie is going to share some powerful insights on lifestyle medicine, supporting children and families, and navigating picky eating, and how small, consistent changes can create profound shifts in health over time. This conversation is about hope, possibility, and about reclaiming our role in our own healing. So let's dive in. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you. Wow, that was an amazing introduction. I
I'm
love it.
really excited to have you here. It's
Well,
always
I'm
fun.
so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's always fun when it's like a friend and colleague.
That is true. That is true. I know, and we love having you even come speak in our programs because your knowledge on ultra processed foods is like really delivered in a way that families understand. And so
Mhm.
they really, really enjoy it and they take it to heart and, take action, which is always what we want, is shifting those behavior changes.
Yeah, and it was when I heard you last speak at a shared presentation we did together, I was like, I have to get her on the podcast. So I'm so excited we're finally having this conversation. So I'm wondering if you can start off with, I kind of shared a little bit about the reason you got in this and made this your purpose, but I'm just wondering if you can share from your perspective how your personal story kind of shaped your professional mission.
For sure. And it can be a long story and it can be a short story. We'll give you the short version.
Yeah.
But at roughly 18 months old, I have an amazing physician here, and she really caught it so quickly that, I mean, it was my first child. My son wasn't making eye contact. And I thought when I went to this pediatrician's visit after a few assessments that I was going to leave there with a speech therapy referral because my son was delayed. And I
Mhm.
thought, okay. And then when I walked in there, this pediatrician looked at me and said, I'm really sorry, but I feel like your son is perfect in every way, but I'm pretty sure he has severe autism. And I was just it literally felt like like the floor came out from under me. I felt like someone jabbed a big wooden stake through my heart, and I just left there crying. And I guess she thought I would know the signs being in healthcare, but we don't, being in the part of healthcare that I was currently working in, we don't see those things. So we would only see autism in a space where they were in their deepest suffering. And this was my first exposure to autism, was a little girl who was literally, being fed through a tube because of picky eating, because of her developmental delay and how far it had gone. And so you can imagine my lens of the world was very like, you're telling me that my child may have this future.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really changed it was like my world changed overnight. Now, I was in healthcare. I had access to research journals, to all of the, top. My brain worked in a way that really looked at data, and it left me feeling really disappointed because
Mm-hmm.
the similarities, the patterns of autism were still being talked about as being genetic. It just seemed so odd that it would fall under a spectrum. Anyways, fast forward about 4 years and a lot of struggles. My son was fully nonverbal still at 5.5. He only ate three foods. This was something nobody really understood. They just said, oh, this is a part of autism that people just naturally have. They eat very little, and they don't want to touch food. So they had severe neophobia. And my son was kind of like that. And so he ate chicken fingers, grilled cheese, and French fries. And I was cooking three different meals for everyone in my family. And I was a picky eater, and my husband was a picky eater. He came by it honestly, truthfully. So you can imagine, I was part of a generation of healthcare workers who just believed everything was genetic. I was told that I was going to have diabetes because half my family had diabetes. I was likely going to have heart disease because half my family had heart disease. And it took for me to have my daughter to decide I want to lose weight, which is such a, we all come from this space sometimes,
Yeah.
but I want to do it different. Like this is back in the day when like the cabbage soup diet was a
Yeah.
thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, I don't want that. That's not my jam. And so I wanted to do it in a different way. And I fell, and we call this the double hit theory. I fell into a world of health that transformed my beliefs. And at the time, my son was at this time about 4, and I
Mm-hmm.
was fermenting my own ketchup. I was eating so clean because of having this individual. Her name was Tosca Reno. If for those of you who don't know, she's a bodybuilder, but she was my first hit. She
Mm-hmm.
challenged my belief that genetics were everything. And as a healthcare worker, this was really interesting to me. I don't know if I would have gotten my second hit for my son, which was just falling into a blog post of all things, because like the
Mm-hmm.
research hasn't showed me anything. I was trying to find ways to help him because my son had had kissing tonsils. He was constantly fighting infections. He was constantly running away from me. He was waking up in the middle of the night. He was not able to even answer to his own name. And so as a parent, you will do anything to
Mm-hmm.
keep your child safe. And I fell into this world of a blog post that this lovely individual wrote that she was going through a health journey with her child, and that she was seeing changes in eye contact and communication. And she cited a very specific individual. Her name is Dr. Campbell McBride. And although that isn't the journey I decided to go on, I want to offer that it was my first touch in the microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I was kind of hooked. It was like the rose-colored glasses came off my eyes, and I just thought to myself, you know what? If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter because I'm gonna make my child healthy, and it's giving me hope. And I was
Mm-hmm.
already doing it for myself.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how many of you have picky eaters. It's really pronounced, and like it's really something that happens in most families, or they know someone. But in our day to day, picky eating is very, very common. And we'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure. But for me, three foods, I had three foods to work with, and I had my brain. And I was like, how do I get him to eat all of these foods? And it was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
My journey started with apple juice because the food was just not going to change. And so I slowly started to use fresh pressed juices in his juice.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to get like cucumber juice, and I was able to get kale, these things. And he started to look at me. And it took time. And that propelled more. brainstorming on how can I make this fun. So I went through a journey that took a long time. Now families can do what I did in 12 months, in 3 months, and 6 months.
Mhm.
So it is pretty amazing. But what came from that was a child that actually started to make eye contact, a child that all of a sudden started to mimic his peers, a child who not only caught up to all the milestones he'd lost, but he also surpassed many of his peers. And he was very, like, he finished, I think it was, I remember like this weight coming off my shoulders in grade 8 at that little graduation that they have. And he
Yeah.
ended the graduation, mainstream school, graduating with honors and multiple awards. And I just thought, okay, like he's gonna be okay. Like he's
Yeah.
going to be in this world and just survive, and not just survive, he's gonna thrive.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I love this story. And when I heard you speak, I was like, our listeners need this. There are so many of them are working on their own health journey, but they have these picky eaters you speak about. But, you talk about bringing the meal or the fun back to mealtime. And I know our current environment, our listeners know our current environment, but we're so busy, right? And meals feel so stressful. So, how do you work with families on kind of making them more fun?
Yeah. So everything, so I want to say that the journey is going to be 80% how you deliver not just the food, but the environment. And
Hmm.
our children, even just our nervous system, which is, many people don't even know what that is, right? Like I remember hearing about it and thinking, wow, yeah, I did do that, but I didn't know it had a name. And just basically the way that our children are connected to us, if we think about old days, like if we think back in the day when we need to run away from a tiger, when we tensed up and our children saw our pupils dilate, it was a message to run. And
Hmm.
right now, when we serve food, we're so PTSD'd from rejection. Our pupils are dilating. We're going in there like, here, have some food. And for a child who's used to taking very serious cues just epigenetically from their parents, it's almost like, are you trying to feed me poison? And not from a space of um, they're scared of it. They're more scared that you're scared. And
Hmm.
so they're thinking that whatever is happening right now is dangerous. And we do not learn or try new things in a scary environment, even though we're just serving food. So I remember, because I'll even give an example. I remember
Yeah.
like making chicken cordon bleu, like this, like, and like my son liked chicken. So I thought, oh my gosh, like my husband loved it. I thought this is going to be the end all. I spent so much time making this. And then like my son literally like pretty much just threw it on the floor. And
Hmm.
after like we have had so many rejections with food, we just assume that this is just how it's going to be. So what I want to offer is that 80% of the work is you because
Hmm.
and 20% of it is strategy. Because once you know the strategy and you apply it, it's really how it's applied that's going to get you there. So when we talk about bringing the fun back to mealtime, and we have changed the program name to the neuronutrition program, but it is definitely all built around bringing the fun back to mealtime. What we do is there are steps, and there are the 4 E's, and I know we're going to be talking about that, so we'll talk about it now. Is that
Yeah.
there are spaces that we want our children to feel safe, because the truth is picky eating is not just a child's behavior. It is both a biological and psychological issue, we'll say. I don't like to use, I'm trying to be very careful with the words I'm using in that sense. It's that
Hmm.
their biology is usually so nutritionally deficient because of just the world we live in ultra processed foods, that their food, the food that we enjoy, is way more bitter to them. So if you have a
Hmm.
zinc or iron deficiency, when you have something green, it actually tastes not so great. So you can, especially if you have children who are as severe as like ARFID children, which
Hmm.
is like severe avoidance restrictive disorder. Like if you give a child who is number one afraid and secondly also deficient a piece of kale and it tastes bitter, and you give it to them 100 times and it tastes bitter every time, will they ever accept it? The answer is of course not. So,
Hmm.
so how do
Yeah.
we, yeah, how do we work with either system? And so the easiest system to work with at first is the biology. And then
Hmm.
the secondary system, which we're going to talk about right now, and I'll talk a bit about the biology later. But the second system is the fun.
Mm-hmm.
That is the psychology of food and our expectations. So there are four E's that I have built into a framework. The first E is expectation. What we think is a food exposure is not a food exposure. So what we think is a food exposure is a child eating a food.
Mm-hmm.
But what actually is a food exposure is your child not throwing it on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally it just being on the plate. If it is there, accepted on in their vicinity, we call that a neutral exposure. If they look at it and don't throw it off, then it is actually a win. If they touch it, it's a win. If they smell it, it's a win. If they throw it in the air and catch it in their mouth, it's a win. So, and this is what we do. We come from a time that just very recently, let's just say 3 decades ago, and I know you teach about this so much, 3 decades ago even, we didn't have to be so lenient with like play at the table because our children weren't hijacked by ultra processed food as their pleasure centers. The other part of that is like the dopamine from screens, right? Like they're not always burnt out, so they're
Yeah.
going to hold off for those things. There was a very big difference. So now with new things coming in, such as chemicals that are, very stimulative to the brain, we need new tools to overcome those. And so
Yeah.
that's a little bit of how I look at what we do. So the bring the fun back starts with expectation, lowering them. You're probably up here, bring it down here. And now that you've probably heard, oh my God, just looking at it is a win. It's a huge win
Mm-hmm.
psychologically. Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just like, so how many exposures for a kid is normal before,
Yeah.
because again, it's like
Mhm.
I can already see as a parent, I'm busy, I'm like,
Yeah.
stressed. Oh, I tried to give it them 3 times and like they didn't eat it. So what's
And the
next?
doctor told me eight, but there's
Yeah.
no magic number. I will offer that my son tried broccoli 25 different times.
Hmm.
In 25 different ways. But I'm going to tell you how to adjust the biology of it after, which is going to speed things up for you. But once, so
Okay.
there are steps. Actually, I think it'd probably be great if we talked about the resistor first,
Yeah.
because it'll bring us into the 4 E's a little bit more streamlined so people,
Yeah.
families understand that exposure is not everything. And the first part is easier. And I think
Hmm.
that exactly where you're coming from, like these busy families. I was busy. I was working call. I was running a business on the side, and I was working full time at the hospital with a brand new baby. So trust
Yeah.
me when I say if I can do it,
Yeah.
anyone can do it.
Exactly.
It's not that my schedule changed, it's that my priorities did. And so one thing I will offer is at first, you need to work with what is working. My families in our programs always hear you need to choose the lowest hanging fruit. And they're like, well, what is that? It's what is working. If your child is eating mac and cheese, you don't expect them to eat a salad, but you can literally have a salad in the mac and cheese. And
Tell
so
us more,
yeah,
Natalie.
right. Because that's the big thing is like, how do we do this? And I'll give you a couple of examples. I just spoke at the International Conference for Autism, and I had two OTs approach me after, and I'll give you the example I gave them because they were just like, you kept us up all night because we are telling families that they are going to gain 3 new foods per year. And you just told us you can overcome picky eating in 6 months and in sometimes three. And
Hmm.
I was like, yes. So I gave them the example of a child who eats rice because rice is pretty accepted in many families. And then I'll give you an example of a child who eats mac and cheese. And
Hmm.
so it'll give families an idea of how this can actually work for them quickly because we make things more complex than it actually is. And for rice, my first step, and of course, I do have a lot of education in nutrition, but you don't have to. My
Yeah.
first step was what can look the same as rice, what can taste close, and what could we fade in a microscopic amount? Because the world of picky eating focuses very heavily on what we call food chaining, but they don't realize that food fading is just a microscopic chain. And so at 10%, you can add cauliflower rice. And for families, they think, well, that's just like nothing, right? That's just nothing. It's not doing anything. And it's
Hmm.
true. Your first time, it's not. That's not the point. You're just actually trying to validate for yourself that it's going to work.
And
And
it's possible.
yes,
Yeah.
and you're also doing something small for our children that we don't realize is happening, which is called taste training. You're
Mhm.
actually creating a food profile without like their taste buds are much more advanced than ours just because of mitosis and we've burnt ours out a little bit over time. And
Yeah.
so the thing that's also, and I know I actually heard you say this at the last chat that we had or the presentation, and I loved it. And I said, for most families, our as adults, our taste buds can change between 7 and 14 days. For kids, it's faster. What we see is
Wow.
actually 3 to 5. So
Nice.
that becomes their new normal. So now after, let's just say your child only eats rice at least 3, 4 times a week, by the end of that week, you would actually have doubled that initial 10%. And then by 2 weeks, you're probably at about 40%. So it looks very quickly like rice. Long-term goal for when I'm teaching families is that within 2 months, a rice dish that was just plain rice is looking like rice, millet, cauliflower rice, and oh, what's the other one? Oh, quinoa, because I like a
Mhm.
full protein in there. But that's just knowledge, right? So they're like, wow, you just made rice like the healthiest thing ever. And
Yeah. So you're saying, just to be clear, like, so you're starting with plain rice. Now you're just adding in a bit of cauliflower rice to
10%.
the plain rice, 10%.
Literally, the 10%
Um,
rule needs to be followed.
yeah. So this is the baiting part where like you're starting to taste train them
Yes.
into, right? Because it's not just about, oh, no more rice and we'll give you cauliflower rice. It's like we
It
need
won't work.
go slow. Yes, I love this. That won't work. That's so important because
It
a
is.
lot of
Because
the
like,
advice out there, right?
and you're
Just
still making rice.
nutrition swaps.
Like
Yeah.
you're making the rice anyways. And with that busy families, that's so achievable. You can buy
Yeah.
cauliflower rice at the store frozen.
Yep.
And you literally just throw it in a pan like you're it's just so simple. So and within that, if you think about that for a month, so most families will try to overcome picky eating pretty consistently for about a month, and they don't move forward because they change too many things. And our rule
Feedback.
of thumb, because we do full sensory profiles when people come into our programs, but our rule of thumb is we don't change more than one sensory experience at a time, which means if you're going to change the taste, you don't change the color or the way it looks. If you're going to change the way it looks, you don't change the taste. For some rigid kids that are really brand specific, like we've had people come into our program just drinking milk. That's it. That's like
Hmm.
they live off that stuff. And they're like, "How are you going to make this work?" And I said, "Trust me, we're going to make it work." And so we start with fading in almond milk and we start with fading in different things. But long-term goal is really just to break through rigidity. And when we have kids that are very like brand specific, it's
Hmm.
really just about serving it at different times, serving it for dinner or for breakfast instead of dinner, serving it, changing the shape of it before we actually change the taste of it. And we need to, and of course, our parents know their children.
Yep.
So ideally, you work with their preferences, not against them. Don't give a child that won't eat red food or green food as like that as a start if they're very, very sensitive to that color. And most kids like the beige diet, we know. So
Yeah.
that's why cauliflower rice is such an easy win. But in the long term, like they could have completely changed a very safe meal within a month.
Yeah. So tell us about mac and cheese then, because
Yeah.
we all have kids who have mac and cheese.
Yes, we do have kids that love Kraft Dinner or whatever version. So sometimes it's about change. So there's so many options, but I will offer the first thing is like obviously look at the meal. How can I make this better?
Hmm.
So sometimes it's just swapping brands that are going to be similar. So for example, if I was looking at Kraft, I'd be like, well, do you think that Annie's mac and cheese would be accepted? It's almost literally the same. It tastes the same. I know I've tried it. And so in those cases, that's the first swap. Now, what's the second swap? So that can happen. And if a child rejects it, and like there's going to be some listeners that are like, yeah, I tried that. My child rejected it. Then you're actually needing to actually fade the Annie's into the Kraft just slowly over time. And you're going to just fade out because remember, taste buds change really
Hmm.
fast. So it's
Hmm.
remembering that piece of it. And then what we do is we look at, and it's funny because my members always say, when I'm looking at my kids' food, I'm always like, I hear your voice. What can I control?
Hmm.
And it's like you could control the sauce and mac and cheese at first. Okay, what do you do then? So I'll give a couple of examples of some things that have been super successful. We will sometimes pick a color, usually that's going to be similar carrots or sweet potato or even squash, and take the sauce itself. And before you add the noodles back in, blend it with a little bit of pumpkin puree or one of these squashes or one of these things in 10% amounts. And you've just added, and people think it's not enough. But you're feeding the microbiome,
Yeah.
you're addressing some of the nutritional deficiencies and you're hitting the liver. And once you go to maybe 2 to 3 tablespoons of that, swap to a new vegetable and fade it in. In our community, we have like over 250 recipes, and we have a community manager who's just absolutely phenomenal. Her mac and cheese is 9 different vegetables. There's not even any
Wow.
dairy left in it at all. It's literally made like it's a cheese sauce made with potatoes, carrots, and it tastes just like mac and cheese. And she has like faded this in. And so at first, that's a little bit of what I mean by you're making the salad the food they like.
Yep. Yep. That makes so much sense.
And for this, parents are having small wins, so the effort feels rewarding.
Yeah. It
So that's
keeps them
part,
motivated,
yeah,
right? To keep
yes,
trying.
yes, because the secondary part is the part where you're talking about how do we bring the fun back?
Yeah.
And this is the more time consuming part, but you need to have those wins first with the biology that you at least feel that when you're feeding your child, you have this weight off your shoulders that you know that you're nourishing their brain. You know
Yeah.
their bodies are building, they're gaining the weight that they're supposed to. Many of the children I work with are severely underweight.
Hmm. Hmm. No, it makes sense because these foods aren't really satiating.
No.
I ate the ones that they're eating. So can you walk us through the four E's
Yeah.
then? Is this like a
Yes.
good time for
This
that? Yeah.
it is. It's perfect. So the four E's is actually about number one, looking at expectation, which we covered expectation, so I'm not going to spend too much time on there. It's really just knowing that now you have an idea that expectation of the foods that they're accepting are going to be the foods you're bridging in. Now,
Yeah.
secondly, though, we want to create adventuring feelings around food. Food at the table, right, can feel scary because we have PTSD, or you've had meltdowns at the table, or you've had so much rejection on both sides that that whole environment doesn't feel good anymore. So,
Yeah.
what we need to do is think to ourselves, okay? And this is called emotional intelligence as well, is that how can we change? Because you can only change yourself, how
Mhm.
you show up. And at first, your child's not going to believe you. When you go in there excited, offering, like, saying, hey, let's just play with this food. We use safe plates, which are just plates where kids are like the plate itself is not meant to be eaten from.
Yep.
You present it and like, this is not for you to eat. All you need to do with this plate is play with the food. You're gonna chop it. I've had kids who enjoy beets, they think it's red. They'll paint the alphabet in it. They'll take
Yeah.
lipstick on. And the closer it comes to their lips, the more that they get a flavor profile for it. And sometimes the next step is they're like, oh, that's good. And then they'll eat it just
Yeah.
naturally. So that's why you're taking our children resist because we're actually putting so much pressure on them. They don't understand and they have fear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I almost like feel the pressure right now, thinking as the little kid and the parent, like, "All right, you need to eat this. Like, you have to have this. Why won't you eat this?" Right. And it's like, that's like, I'm stressed even thinking about it.
I was the little kid who sat at the table because I hated beans. And so I would fall asleep at the table, and my parents couldn't understand why. And I was that first generation of like zoodles, Pop-Tarts, and that's all I ate. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, it created a lot of people think that sensory kids are kids that just have like different wiring, but sensory processing disorder is generally goes away when you address nutritional deficiencies and cofactors.
Yeah, which
So
is huge, right? Especially if they've just been eating ultra processed food since they're babies.
yeah, so my parents never thought to ask, and I understand, like I don't blame them because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And but like they never thought to ask, like they just thought I didn't want to eat it because I just didn't want to eat it and I was just being difficult. But I wasn't. I it was like the texture of the outer part of the bean is different than the texture inside the bean. It would actually make me gag.
Mm.
And just so everybody knows, I started eating beans at 40 because I found out how healthy they are. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I understand, but I taste trained myself. So my
Yeah.
son brought me through a journey of taste training him and like overcoming his picky eating, but I overcame it for me. And now my husband is not a picky eater. We will eat anything now.
That's amazing.
So, bringing us back to the four E's, the
Yeah.
next one, yeah, is like the next one is that emotional intelligence. How am I able to show up for them? And how do I check in before I serve food? I've literally had families so anxious about the process because their children almost went to feeding therapy because they were only eating three things that
Yeah.
actually get the dad to or the brother or I want them to feed the food. They are
Yeah.
now the food servers. And it's amazing. They're like, it almost makes them feel bad in a way, but at the same time, they're happy. And I said, what it shows you though, is not that there is something wrong with you, because now you know that that nervousness is validated, number one,
Mhm.
because of what you've been through, but now you have something to work on. You're not
Mhm.
starting with why isn't this working?
Right. It's like, what can I do for me that's actually in my
Yes.
control? And it makes so much sense, right? Because anxiety shows up when it's something that really matters to us and something we really care about. So it's not a bad thing. It's just like, how do I work with my own anxiety
Exactly.
around, like, and not pass that off while I'm passing the plate of food?
And it seems so silly, right? Like for some families, they're like, I just don't get it. But then they start to do the work. They start to do
Yeah.
breath work. Like, honestly, this isn't like something, it is a practice. We always
Yep.
tell people it's a practice, it's a change, but it's like literally something that takes 5 seconds to do. Before you serve food, one of the things you do, are you present? Do you have your feet on the ground? Take a couple of breaths. Like, or are you already thinking that you failed? Because whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
So if you're going
Yeah.
in there like about to be like ready for rejection, that's what you're going to get. It's literally how your body is emanating what you want.
Hmm.
So, anyways, emotional intelligence is the second E. The third E is actually environment. It's one of my favorites because it can mean so many things. We bring people through like 4 rounds of our program when they come, and every time I talk about the 4 E's, I get excited because I'm like, every time you will evolve this. The first
Hmm.
time you're going to pick your lowest hanging fruit, which is the one you feel is mostly achievable. But you're also going to next time, you're going to come back and be like, oh, I did this and it's successful. Now I'm going to try this. So with environment, we look at the external environment and we think to ourselves a few different things. Number one, is the environment that we are in causing more distress? It can be as simple as minimalizing, keeping the dogs out that are running around, having papers not all over the table, or it could be a completely opposite environment. Hey, do I want to take the kids for a picnic? Do I want to go make a fort in the living room and we're going to feed all the toys and eat together on a weekend?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
really the sky is the limit. The ideas that we give are like pretty much like non-ending.
Yeah,
Um,
I already want to go on the picnic and eat in the fort myself. So, like, I
it's
could totally
amazing. It's
understand what
amazing.
kids want to do. Yeah.
It is. You can have them dress up literally like in a cape, and you are now like, your superhero version. And he eats his broccoli. Why wouldn't it? Like, it just really
Yeah.
entices the ability to do that. So environment is one of my favorites because it literally never runs out of ideas. You can
Mhm.
change the internal and external environment on a whim as often as you want, and you choose that based on what's easiest, what's fastest. Like not everyone is going to be able to make a fort, but some people can put a garbage bag like a cape around their kid and be like, hey,
Yeah.
you know what I
You're
mean?
like, here we go.
So, and it's perfect. And then the last piece of it is encouragement. And I choose to say that one last because people assume that encouragement means take a bite. That's not it. Encouragement is bringing them in the kitchen, is
Mm-hmm.
letting them cook with you. And I work with families who have severe nonverbal profound children, which means they can't even take instructions. So, but
Hmm.
kids on the spectrum love water. And so I say they can wash vegetables, throw them in the sink with a colander. They have all the vegetables now. And you've just created a positive experience with the food. You are
Hmm.
rebuilding the relationship with food. And I want to offer something that's going to be a little hard for some families to hear, but they need to hear it, is that you forcing your children to eat a food that they don't enjoy, when they leave the home, they're just going to eat whatever they want anyways. And I want to offer a different perspective. If you can heal the relationship with food, and let's just say there's a food that is extremely healthy that you would like them to eat, find a way with them in the kitchen that brings them. I'll
Hmm.
give you an example so that is very clear. My son hates mangoes, but he knows he loves a smoothie and he prefers it with mangoes. When he leaves the house, I'm going to buy him a blender and he's going to eat mangoes,
Yeah.
even though, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because what we think about food, and I know you're such a big proponent of creating these relationships, is really going to be powerful. I have families that say you have to sit and eat your dinner, and they come from that space, and it's only going to get you so far in an ultra processed world.
Yeah, and I would say that many of the clients that I work with came from those homes where their parents would force them to like sit at the table until they finish. They wouldn't get anything else. And it creates already, can be disordered relationship with food. It can be eating disorder. It can be food addiction.
And in my case, I didn't eat beans till I was 40.
Yeah. Is I think my parents, were physicians and I started on chocolate breakfast because again, it was the
Mm.
only thing I would eat apparently. And, sometimes we hear in the space, and I'm curious your thoughts on this is like fed is best.
Oh,
Right?
always. Oh,
And I absolutely like I'm just
I don't
wondering,
agree with that.
yeah, tell me more.
Yeah, so I think that when we say fed is best, we don't take into consideration that anti-nutrient foods exist these days. And if
Hmm.
people don't know what anti-nutrient means, it means that it requires the body to actually use more of its nutrients to process it. Meaning
Hmm.
that after you've eaten the food, you actually no longer have these nutrients. So you're going to end up with metabolic disorders. You're going to end up with a brain fog, mental illness. And so we think fed is best, and we use that term because we want people to obviously not starve to death. I do understand.
Right. Right.
But
Like
at
if
the
you're
same,
coming from poverty and you don't have
absolutely.
access to food is key first. Yes.
But you know what? Some of the best foods are cheapest.
Hmm.
So I always challenge that. Like fat
Yeah.
fats can be like a $2 meal or $2 like in a bag of lentils. Like I just made the best lentil little buns, and all that was in it was water and lentils. I made four of them. It cost me probably less than 30 cents, and it lasted me 4 days. It was full of protein and fiber. And so
Hmm.
even though I understand the fat is best mentality, and it comes from a heart-led
Yeah.
place.
Yes.
So we always know, like that's why I never, it's more about the reframe of fed is best, was best maybe in 1970, but fed
Yep.
is no longer in that, our food is no longer the same quality to provide that. Because when we offer things like craft dinner to kids, or we're off, and even to adults, and we're offering a lot of these processed foods, and they are actually degrading and depleting at a
Yes.
rate that is much slower, and that it's affecting everything. It's affecting them. They're suffering. They don't know what's happening to them. They go to the hospital now because they have diabetes, they have all these conditions, and they think that it's just genetic still in many
Hmm.
cases. But really, it's being provided, unfortunately, by people who are actually loving on them and not realizing that these things are harmful.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw this even in our nutritional study is like when people switch from the ultra processed to the whole foods, anxiety went down, depression went down, and well-being went up. And obviously their BMI started to shift in the trajectory they were looking for. And, so when we're saying things like fed is best for our kids, is it if we're feeding them anxiety? Is it if they were feeding them depression, and we're affecting their well-being? Because in this world, like you said, with screens, they're already up against so much.
They are. And honestly, I'm watching kids that are like 11 years old being diagnosed with metabolic disorders. They're on hyperthyroid or hypothyroidic pills. They're on blood pressure pills. Like 11-year-olds should not be on any of these medications. These are lifestyle diseases.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love what you do. I'm wondering, can you talk about the three stages, right? Resistor, adventurer, and negotiator. So, how can parents really identify where their child is and why does that matter so much?
It does, because the approach is going to be completely different for each stage. And I mean, after working with hundreds, now I know how efficient this is that finding your stage and knowing your approach makes the success rate so much higher. So for a resistor, these are the children who are brand specific. They are not accepting new foods whatsoever. They are almost dissecting food because they've lost trust with food. Maybe at one point you did try to sneak foods into like their spaghetti sauce, but you went too big, and they're
Mhm.
like now completely distrusting of everything. And on the flip side of that, if they're brand specific, like we have children come in just eating French fries. Like that's all they eat. McDonald's French fries, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And these children are usually our most severe cases, obviously. And
Yeah.
so that's a little bit of looking at the resistor stage. Their biology at the foundation is crumbling.
Yeah.
And so what we look at, sometimes people will have surpassed this stage, but for most families with picky eaters, they're going to find themselves in this space of, okay, my son eats less than 10 foods. Maybe some of them are healthier, like yogurt, or maybe
Hmm.
they're eating. I even have one child who came in eating not bad things. She was eating, a chicken breast, peas, and I think it was rice, but that's all she ate for
Hmm.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so in those moments, you're kind of like, okay, but you are missing some big components. So those are usually you're very limited in your food intake and diversity, and in some cases very brand specific, and distrust is there. So then we move
Yeah.
to the other stage. So for most families that I work with, they're in the resistor stage at first. The second stage though is called the adventurer stage. And this is when children are accepting foods that are blended in other foods. They're eating smoothies sometimes, like this, and this happens with parents a lot. And I completely understand because I'm a parent and I run a business. So it's like really, I'm very busy, but it's like, and I prioritize health. So I do like, I already know that because this is part of my business, I'm prioritizing it and I'm still struggling, right? So
Mhm.
I know that other families are.
Yeah.
And so I'll offer that they'll take things like if a child has a smoothie, they're like, that's great. Like all the rest of the meals can be bad. That's
Hmm.
kind of like where I would say we're moving into the adventurer stage is that they're at least accepting a lot of nutrients in certain areas, but they're still very highly processed. That's when we're bridging into the adventurer stage. The adventurer
Okay.
stage kids are looking at that they are eating some healthier foods. They have more than 10 of diversity, but their food is still mostly ultra processed,
Okay.
meaning they're kind of always hijacked, right? So they'll
Yep.
eat it
Yep.
because it's there. Like they're gonna go home for dinner, but then they're gonna go to school. They're gonna buy the bag of chips. They're gonna like they're doing
Yep.
all the little weaving in there. So those are more of our adventure, and they're still pretty resistant to a large group of food groups. And that would have been where I a little bit was falling into. Like I resisted beans, would not eat it. I would not eat avocados. And I want to offer that although yes, we don't have to love a food, and we there are many other foods that have the same or a similar nutrient profile, I do want to offer that if you want to, I can guarantee you you can.
Yes. I love that.
So, because I'll tell you, I hated avocados. I usually bring people through my bean journey and my avocado
Yeah.
journey. Like first time that my son's like I gave him avocado as a baby because most parents I want to offer are wanting their children to eat healthy. Like the first
Yeah.
start for the first year and a half. Generally, like some of these parents are making everything from scratch and they're like, I don't know what happened. And I know that that was also something I wanted to cover is like, where did it start? How did
Hmm.
this start? And I'm going to be really kind and say that it's with complete heart that this happens. But as soon as one actual taste of ultra processed food has hijacked that, trifecta of sugar, salt, and fat, you
Yep.
will increase picky eating
Hmm.
even just once. And grandparents and external family members who don't know, and they come, I wish I could shift this in our society is that
Hmm.
rewarding or connection doesn't need to become from food.
Yeah.
And I know that you're trying to build that. Grandparents want to give their children something to make them closer to them. But experiences are so much better, like going to the park. Like free
Yes.
experiences, your time that you give them at their level will be mean so much more to them than the, ice cream cone that you just got them.
Yep.
So I want to offer that the more micro exposures they get, the more that they're going to be
Challenging.
picky. And at
Yeah.
15 months old, there is a window. So we do an exposome assessment, and it's going to bring me back to that middle adventurer stage, but we
Yep.
do exposome assessment. And one of the questions is, when did you see your child either regress or stop progress? And it's literally 15 to 18 months old. And there's a couple of things that happen in that time, but one of them is that we have a big burst of neurons
Hmm.
children. And if we are not providing the building blocks for neurons, which are literally omega rich foods, zinc high foods, beans, lentils, chickpeas, meats, like some people eat meats. That's why I'm saying meats. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, I eat more plants, but we're not opposed. I'll take any nutrients that are coming in.
Yeah.
And so when those things are no longer on the table, that's when we see not meeting milestones like speech, walking,
Hmm.
and we're seeing it. We're delaying milestones more and more. They just announced that potty training, the milestone used to be 18 months old, and they've just delayed it more. They're not asking the question, well, why? Why all
Why?
of a sudden?
Yeah. They're like, this is just how it is now, which is
Speech,
wild, right?
speech used to be like the milestones were at 18 months old, you had to have so many words. They've actually now changed that completely as well. It's
Oh,
been
wow.
delayed. So milestones for our children who are basically like our little canaries, they can't talk, but they're the most affected. We're not necessarily paying the attention that we could. So
Hmm.
it brings me back though to once this has started and has started a habit, even if children eat some healthier foods, which is where we find a lot of our population is like they're actually between like what 70, I think it's 70% I saw when Dr. Kaplan came that they're eating processed foods.
Yep.
That would be an adventure, is like they're at 70% processed foods.
Wild.
And so at that point, we want to create fun in the kitchen and we want to experiment. That's
Hmm.
when I always tell people once you've had a lot of wins, you're more motivated because now you know your children are eating a little healthier. But now it's about the lens I want you to view this from is if your child is fully independent by 18 years old and they're going to go out into the world and they're going to go to college, they're going to do these things, how would you make it so that they would like the food you want them to like? And a
Yeah.
lot of it means helping them learn to cook.
Yes.
I paid my son so we would pay my son to prep food for us.
Oh, I love that idea.
And he took a cooking class this year as well. It's not where he wants to go. He loves film. Like he has a very specific
Yep.
trajectory he's very interested in, but he loves the fact that he can cook. He enjoys cooking. He makes healthy foods. And for him, he's gluten and dairy free. So when you have a restriction,
Hmm.
that's helping you, the best way to maintain it is to know how to support yourself.
Hmm. And they've taken like home ec, right, out of many
They
of the
have,
school
they
systems.
but they have them replaced it with cooking classes. They've
Okay.
actually almost like specialized it a little bit. So I don't want to say that I think they have sewing now. So it's almost
Oh,
fashion. So I think that instead of
yeah.
like taking it out, they've actually just broken it apart.
Yeah.
Which is fine so long
Yeah.
as like someone really wants to learn like that one specific task. And if cooking is, I would offer, like, if your children are getting older and you're listening to this podcast and they are picky eaters, get them in a cooking class, get them in the
Yeah.
kitchen. And there are foods that taste like nothing that are full of nutrients also, by the way.
Oh, name some of those already.
Chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, hemp hearts, like a lot of the seeds and nuts, like you can grind these up, you can add them to things. Really, they don't taste like a lot.
Yeah, it's true, right? Again, a bit of that fading in there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and yet
And
they're so actually nutrient dense that eating even just like a spoonful of it in like throughout the day is increasing your zinc to almost like your full recommended dose.
which is huge, right? So how do you work with the negotiator?
The negotiator is very, very interesting, and you never want to start there, which is why we always do it last. There is a really important thing to when we work with negotiators. Number one, it's very taboo to talk about collaboration negotiation, but it's actually going to be one of the best skills your kids learn at the table in the future. Is that sometimes, and this is only to be done when a child has accepted on their own out of the inventor stage as they grow into the negotiator stage, they have already expanded their palate a lot.
Okay.
Reason is that if you go into a negotiator stage and you're like, here, do you want some chocolate cake for that broccoli? That
Hmm.
might work for you the first time, but then
Yeah.
you're going to get more, they're eventually going to just eat the chocolate and tell you no for the broccoli. So
Hmm.
you do need to know what to negotiate with. And I like to, even though it's called the negotiator, it's actually one of the most studied for nutrition. I know
Okay.
it's interesting, eh? So
Yeah.
I call it the negotiator, but how they do it in the videos for feeding therapy were in my program is they actually start with what they call a reinforcer object, which is something that your child prefers. You have a toy at the table, you put it down, then you take a carrot and you put it in, like they would show it like in a waffle. And so the
Yeah.
child doesn't know they're eating it, kind of like what we go through. And then
Yeah.
they put it between two pieces, but the child can see it. And they put the reinforcer there as like the toy they can keep. And then they
Hmm.
negotiate with the toy. And so
Okay.
studies show that negotiating is extremely successful when done properly. It's just that it can go very wrong. What
Really quick, if you're, I could see with the cake scenario. Yeah.
But that's actually how I got my son to eat cake because I didn't know any better, or eat broccoli. But I will
Yeah.
offer, it was not a normal cake. Like the cake that I used was made out of date paste. It was literally avocados and black beans and
Yeah.
cacao powder. So, I mean, there is a difference, but at the same time, I don't want to necessarily tell people that's the right way to go. I
Yeah.
prefer to negotiate experiences. And I will give you an example. We have one
Yeah.
member who came up with, they call it a coupon system, that whenever their children choose to eat vegetables, they get coupons worth points, and at the end they get to cash them in for a very specific list of things, and none of them are sweets. All of
Yeah.
them are, one of them is like having a camp, a basement camp out with the parents. One of them is picking what goes in the bath. One of them, like, they're just really fun things.
Yeah.
It's also independence. It's almost like learning that um transactionary experience.
Right. And like choice.
Yes.
right? Making them
Yes.
feel like they are a little bit empowered in this eating decision as well, it sounds.
Yes, and it's really important. The choices are everything. When we work with kids, at first we are addressing the biology, but there will be a time where that's all your child has is choices. When they're
Hmm.
18, you don't get to choose for them anymore if they don't want to. So looking at it from where can we give them more choices, it also builds autonomy. So with the negotiator stage, we don't stay in that stage too long because by then, after the adventure, usually they've hit all their big foods. When I worked with my son for the negotiator stage was I really wanted him to eat broccoli. If there's like the one food you really want them to eat, or back then it was bone broth. Like my son
Yeah.
threw up the first time he drank bone broth. So, and I really wanted him because I knew that it was linked to really good gut health. And I mean, now I know that you could do the same thing with vegetables, but I just didn't know back then. And so so at the time, I was really enticing him. And so I was like, well, let's negotiate going for a walk in the woods after work or after dinner, which was
Yeah.
is a little bit of extra time for me, but he liked it. So at that point,
Mhm.
he started trialing it out of a straw. And actually now, if you ask him, he's like, "Oh, I love it. It's my favorite. I only like broth soups." And it's like,
Oh.
"Yeah, you used to throw up." But same
Yeah.
thing, just so everybody knows, same thing with broccoli. When I talk about this story, my son goes, "Mom, broccoli is my favorite vegetable." I'm like, sure.
Oh, that's so good. Well, I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
So, where can our listeners find you?
They can find us at www.blueliferx.com. All of our resources are there. I also have a pretty robust Instagram account, which is called the Rebel Spectrum. And also, we will be starting a podcast soon,
Woo!
which is going to be called the Brilliant Building Brilliant Brains podcast. So you can look for that. It will obviously hit Spotify and all the places. And we're hoping to have that running in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I will put all the links there so that everyone can find you everywhere because I'm sure there's going to be so many questions and a demand for more. We do have a signature question, and it is we always kind of tailor it to the guests we have. If you could tell a younger version of yourself something about how to feed your kids, what would you say to her?
Don't reinvent the wheel. Use the lowest hanging fruit and keep it as simple as possible. And then when I think about my younger version and I think about sitting in my kitchen crying, like little huddled over, trying to make everything from scratch, one behavior will lead into another behavior, which is a habit. So just start with one, not 10.
I love that so much. And then you kind of touched on it a little. I want to make sure we touch on this because with our kids, sometimes it is the grandparents, it is, the other people that are watching our kids. How do we communicate to them what we're trying to do in a loving way so that, they get on board with supporting us in this?
I think that honestly could be a whole call in itself, but I will offer this. My dad didn't talk to me for an entire month because he didn't understand. And I want in reflection now, knowing what I know now, I could have completely shifted how that outcome would have been if I would have met him with the outcome that he wanted, which was just more connection.
Mhm.
And in some cases, sometimes it will be about providing the food yourself in like the rare, but your parents and your family members want your children to thrive. And so if you meet them where they're at with language that says that we're both really looking for, so and so's to thrive, he's struggling right now with this. So it's really important that he focuses on eating these things versus these things. And I know that it's just as important to you as it is to me that he feels good. And so I'd really appreciate it if you could, really just support him this way. And if you want to know a couple of different avenues for connection, because I know you want to connect with him really special, then these are his preferred activities.
Mm, I love that. That's so helpful. Well, thank you so much for being here, Natalie. And I'm sure we'll have some guest follow-up questions for you in the
I love
future.
it. I
All
love
right. Thank you
it.
so
Thank you so
much.
much. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group. I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.